with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you, Lord.
Now a man was ill, Lazarus, from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who had anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and dried his feet with her hair. It was her brother, Lazarus, who was ill. So the sisters sent word to Jesus saying, Master, the one you love is ill. And when Jesus heard this, he said, the illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Then after this he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him while Mary sat at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you'd been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise. And Martha said, oh, I know he'll rise on the resurrection, the last day. And you know, I think Jesus looked right into her eyes. In the same way, he's looking into every one of our hearts right at this moment. And he said to her, and he says to us, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And she said, yes, Lord. I've come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one that was to come into the world. Martha went and called her sister Mary secretly, saying, the teacher's here and he's asking for you. And as soon as Mary heard this, she rose quickly and she went to him. For Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still where Martha had met him. So when the Jews who were with her in the house, comforting her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out, they followed her, presuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, and she said to him, Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her weeping, he became a bit perturbed and deeply troubled, and said, Where have you laid him? And they said to him, Sir, come and see. And Jesus wept. So the Jews said, See how he loved him? But some of them said, could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so that this man would not have died? So Jesus, perturbed again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay across it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, dead man's sister, said to him, Lord, by now there will be a stench. He's been dead. He's been dead for 4 days. And Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? They took away the stone. raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me. But because of the crowd here, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, tied hand and foot with burial bands, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. So Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. Now many of the Jews who had come to Mary and seen what he had done began to believe in him. Sisters and brothers, the gospel, the good news of the Lord. Praise be to the Lord Jesus Christ.
When I was a kid, I used to love to play the same games over and over and over again. We used to make up parades when I was a kid. And parade on the street, we'd get dressed up in costumes and everything, and I could have done that parade every day of the week. I had so much fun with parades. And hide and seek, I could play over and over and over again. I never got tired of these games. I never got tired of doing things over and over again. I never got tired of watching my favorite TV shows over and over again. I never got tired of watching my favorite movies over and over again. I can read the same book 50 times. I want to hear it over and over again. I can hear that story over and over and over again. I never get tired of hearing that story. Most of the stories, actually, from the gospel. I don't get tired of hearing them. I just enjoy hearing them over and over and over again. Every time I hear them, I hear something different. I hear something new, and I get great pleasure out of it. I love hearing that story, and I'm sorry to make you stand through such a long reading before hearing what I might have to say tonight or suggest about it. It's one of my favorites. All three of those Gospels that we hear in Lent, whenever we have the RCIA process happening, the Scrutiny Gospels, some of you might be familiar with that phrase, the man born blind, and the woman at the well, and raising of Lazarus. We hear those almost every year, and I could hear them over and over and over again. And this one is such a loaded story. There's so much going on in it. So absolutely, every line is another whole homily, right? And I'm not giving a homily, I'm giving you my thoughts. But the line that really struck me and why I wanted to hear it tonight is the prayer that Jesus prays. Right towards the end, he says, the gospel says, Jesus raised his eyes and he said, Lord, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me. That one just strikes me. That's the only thing he says in prayer. He doesn't say anything else. So I'm captivated by hearing. I thank you for hearing me. Well, nothing up until that point has he said to God, so I'm not sure what this hearing is. Or maybe I do know what the hearing is. Maybe I know my own prayers sometimes that don't find words. And yet, the prayer is really strong. And I trust that God hears it somehow, right? But I'm wondering what Jesus' prayer was in that moment. And I'm really struck by the fact that he starts off with gratitude. I thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. I want to begin my prayers that way, with such confidence. I thank you for hearing me. I thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. Even when I don't find the words. He goes on, he says, I'm doing this for the crowd. Because of the crowd that's gathered here, I've said this, that they can believe that you sent me. He's teaching us about prayer, I think think he's teaching us about gratitude. I want that kind of gratitude. I want that kind of prayer in my life. And Jesus is such a model for us, right? I mean, over and over and over again, I just keep loving hearing how he deals with circumstances. And there were a lot of circumstances in this particular story. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, the grief, the death of his own friend. And he goes to gratitude. When I've dealt with grief, I don't know that gratitude was the first place I went. My own sorrow, my own sadness is where I went. I didn't necessarily go to gratitude first. I wonder what my prayer would have been like had I started off with, I thank you for hearing me. I thank you. And then my grief. Other circumstances, the uncertainty. In the beginning of the story, he's saying, let's go back to Judea. He has to go to this place where they were just trying to stone him. So going into an uncertain place. Have you ever been going into an uncertain place where you weren't sure if you were saved? Was your prayer, thank you? I don't know. Mine wasn't. I'd like to think next time it will be. I thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. Disappointment. He was disappointed. He had to be disappointed. He was so fully human. He had to be disappointed that his friends didn't always get what he was about. Sometimes I encounter people that disappoint me, who don't get what I'm about, and oftentimes my prayer, I'm confessing, has been, Lord, save me from your people. Right? I trust that God has heard really my prayer in that moment, and not necessarily my words, but he goes to, Father, I thank you, rather than maybe going off on the friends that didn't get it. Martha missing the whole point. You'd have been here. He's perturbed. We hear it twice. He's perturbed in dealing with Mary's complaint. He's perturbed again in dealing with the pettiness of the crowd, who is, well, couldn't he have done something to save this man? He doesn't deal with the pettiness. He doesn't deal with the circumstances. He goes to gratitude. I thank you. Oh, sometimes I deal with pettiness. Do you ever deal with pettiness? I can't honestly say that my first prayer is gratitude. But I'm learning. I'm learning to sail my ship in really nasty waters. I'm not always really good at it. But Jesus teaches me, and he's teaching us in this story. He's deeply troubled. We hear that he's deeply troubled at their lack of faith. He's deeply troubled, and he goes to gratitude. Thank you. He weeps. He's deeply, deeply saddened at the death of his friend, and he goes to gratitude. A man with depth of emotions that range from love to sadness and patience to anger, and he goes to gratitude. I really do wonder what he says. When he raises his eyes to heaven, we hear this gospel read, but I think sometimes there's some maybe little notes in there about Jesus waited for a little while before he said anything. He raised his eyes. Maybe there was a long silence. Father, I thank you for hearing me. A beautiful, silent, quiet prayer. We don't know what the words were. Maybe we do. Maybe our own experience of that. I don't have the words for this. I'm so deeply saddened. They don't get me. She doesn't get me. He doesn't get me. They're going to stone me. I'm really afraid. All of that. Or did he say, look, I'm going to ask something really big here in a couple seconds. I'm going to ask this deadpan command. I really need you to show up right now. Really big, impossible question I'm going to ask you. Thank you for hearing me. Maybe he's foretelling or actually setting it up. This is going to be answered. Really need this to happen. but it's loaded with faith. That prayer of gratitude is loaded with faith. You have to have faith to be able to say thank you first. I thank you for hearing me. I know you always hear me. That's faith. If Jesus could be honest about his emotions, his love, his anger, his disappointment, his grief, he says it, he was perturbed, he was deeply troubled, he was weeping. If he could develop friendships that stirred his heart, like Lazarus and Mary and Martha, if he could deal with his own disappointment at his friend's lack of faith, they could get, how much more should we be able to do the same? We're called to do the same. And I think he teaches us how to respond to those circumstances with gratitude. I thank you. I thank you for hearing me. I've been told by more than a few people that I would have been a good Jew. I'm not really sure exactly why I get that from time to time, but I think it might have to do with my love of Psalms. I have a great fondness for them. I find myself praying them a lot during the week as things are coming at me and I'm alone. I find the Psalms bubbling up in me. Maybe it's because I've been singing them for 43 years or more. Jesus had these Psalms. He was steeped in them. He prayed them. We know that about him. And over my years of singing the Psalms, study of Psalms, I stumbled across some work by Walter Brueggemann. Some of you might be familiar with his work or his writings. And he had a way of categorizing and talking about Psalms and teaching Psalms that really helped me understand them and helped me pray them. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, so maybe it will help you pray them. And it might take you to that gratitude place. At the earlier part of this century, we got from some German thinkers a whole categorization of psalms. Psalms of praise and psalms of thanksgiving and royal psalms and psalms of lament and all these different categories of psalms. And Walter Brueggemann took all that and said, I think you were in one of three places when you were able to write a psalm. If you were the composer of the psalm, you were either in a really great place where all was well with the world, God was in God's heaven, and we could say, praise you, Lord, for the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all things are go. Or you were in the second spot, where you were deep in the mire, deep in the muck. He calls these times of disorientation, when we're not right with the world. And our prayer is usually like, help me get out of this mess I'm in. And the third place, he says, is once we've been pulled out of the muck, but then our psalm, our prayer, is a psalm of thanksgiving. And it's praise, rooted in thanksgiving. I will praise you, Lord, for you've rescued me. You hear that in the Psalms. One of those three places. And I think Jesus had to know these Psalms, and I bet he prayed a lot of those. I will praise you, Lord, for you've rescued me. Those texts, I'm sure he found himself praying a lot. He had to have been trained in that. He had to have been raised in that. He had to have been taught about gratitude. To be able to raise his eyes to heaven in the midst of all that mess and say, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. He had to have been raised with the Lord hears the cry of the poor. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. He had to have been steeped in that. He had to have been taught, probably by his mother, about gratitude, please and thank you. Who taught you your please and thank you? Who taught you to be a grateful person? Bring that person to mind tonight as we move on in our prayer. In our quiet. And let the words that bubble up be, Lord, I thank you for hearing me. You always hear. And next time we meet up with the doubtful ones or the circumstances that are things that perturb us or deeply trouble us, let our first words not be ones of anger, but ones of gratitude. Let our next grief-stricken moment not be one of anger. Let our prayer be, I thank you, Lord. Let us find a way back to gratitude. Let us be taught by the Lord, who experienced all these things, and go to gratitude. I've got a roof over my head. I've got a warm place to sleep. Some nights I lie awake counting gifts instead of counting sheep. I've got a heart that can know love. I've got a mind that can think. There may be times when I lose the light and let my spirit sink, but I can't stay depressed. When I remember how I'm blessed. Grateful, grateful, truly grateful am I. Grateful, grateful, truly blessed, and duly grateful. In a city of strangers, I've got a family of friends. No matter what rocks and brambles fill the way, I know that they will stay until the end. I feel a hand holding my hand. It's not a hand you can see, but on the road to the promised land, this hand is holding me through the night and through despair, holding tight and always there. Grateful, grateful, truly grateful am I. Grateful, grateful, truly blessed, and duly grateful. Father, I thank you for hearing me. You always hear me.
I will praise you, Lord. I will praise you, Lord, for you rescued I struck dumb and amazed, and death was my doom. You shattered my tomb. Your love drew me clear of the grasp of the grave. I will praise you, Lord. I will praise you, Lord, for you have rescued me. You have rescued me. Yahweh, we sing to you. Mother, we cling to you. See how your anger dissolves like a cloud. Though I may weep as I drift off to sleep,